This is the first game of the day in this semifinals. It's going to be Clem versus HeroMarine, and in the top right-hand side, it is Big Gabe.
And down here on the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have our red Terran player from Team Liquid, our champion, actually, for Europe for the previous 2 seasons of 2021. He is Clem. Or I should say, almost the previous 2 seasons, if you exclude Winter. The last season that happened, Sterile ended up winning that over Clem. Clem ended up getting second, but he won both summer and fall of 2021. He won 2 of the 3 seasons last year.
3 in a row too, right? So he won 2 out of the last year, but then also the one right before that. So Clem, 3 in a row that one time around, then stopped by Cyril, and now looking to reclaim the European crown, which he has been. This is his most successful tournament, without a doubt.
Absolutely. It's honestly been so great to see Clem kind of rise back into form and look so strong. I know that in the international tournaments, sometimes he has, I would say it's an unfair standard that we have, but he feels like sometimes Clem underperforms compared to what we want from him. But what we want from him is to get top 2 or win a premier international tournament. It's a really high bar that we hold him to. So when we say underperform, it's like he gets top 8 or top 4 instead. But when it comes to these regional things for Europe, Clem is just on fire. He is absolutely killer. It feels like if the Big Gabe Weekly is where HeroMarine feels at home, then I would say DreamHack SC2 Masters Europe is where Clem feels most at home.
I would completely agree with that. And he's going to try to make it his home once again, as we have an SCV kind of just patrolling here and looking for Reapers potentially on the low ground. HeroMarine is going to be scouting with his Reaper, and now Clem is going to use this SCV, which was hiding, to try and poke and get the Reaper of HeroMarine to fire at it. Once that Reaper fires at the SCV, that's an opportunity lost to go onto the Reaper, but no, actually, it's going to still be Clem with the jump here, as HeroMarine will react, and that means the Reaper is displaced. So now the command center is going to be delayed. Amazing move here from Clem to start. A big surprise. Same units, it don't matter. The kid is ahead.
He definitely is. Wants to keep this Reaper alive because he is also building a bunker, very interestingly, around that command center. That is going to have to get canceled as the Hellion plus the Reaper do chase things back. But Hellion, got to be careful not to overcommit here. Clem is honestly so good at the early game micro in these little moments here. I think HeroMarine, got to be careful with that Reaper.
Yeah, and at the same time, Clem can try to leverage his Reapers to try to pull HeroMarine out of position, but now HeroMarine with 2 more Reapers at a time, thanks to the reactor on his barracks, is going to mean that Clem is going to lose a lot of momentum, at least to be aggressive, and he's going to have to pull back. At the end of the day, it was 1 SCV for 1 SCV, and Clem did have his SCV out on the map for a long time, so there is more mining lost on the side of Clem, but there is the slight delay on the command center for HeroMarine, so let's call it a wash.
Yeah. I would say at the end of the day, it's probably all little early game skirmishes that are nice, and very rarely, but occasionally they can snowball into something really big, but not going to be the case. Both these players are going to be on point with their defenses and offense. We get to move into kind of more of a normal TVT game. And I think at this point, Cats, it's something I really want to point out, which is playstyle-wise, Clem is very good at these kind of micro moments. He's very good, I would say, at seizing like the momentum of a game, right? In the midst of a game, he has this knack for finding the right ways, the right opportunities to try and put on pressure or basically get the ball rolling. Whereas HeroMarine has a very contradictory style. He, on the other hand, is very good at preparation. He's very good at coming ready for some particular match. And I would say it's not necessarily that he can't react, but he does his best job when he's doing an pre-planned execution of some sort of strategy. And I feel like the longer the game goes on, the kind of more interesting it'll be in terms of like how these two face off against each other. I actually will like things a little bit more for HeroMarine if he can survive a bit longer.
Yeah, but that is what Clem does. He's gonna get in your face, and he's already here. We see like everything that Clem does is so very much like geared towards efficiency in poking, efficiency in giving himself the greatest chance to have the most amount of units as early as possible on the other side of the map, right? He never really, or I shouldn't say never, but very rarely will you see Clem going for big all-ins or big timings. It's mostly just small skirmishes that he looks for over and over. He wants to get that snowball rolling, and that is what HeroMarine has to try to prevent.
Yeah, absolutely. And so far, he's doing a pretty good job of it. He hasn't lost too much, losing a handful of Marines here or there, but at the end of the day, he is still able to keep Clem fairly pushed back. Now, the real push here for Clem is going to be coming once the Medivacs and other kind of units start coming on out. Clem already has the first couple of Ravens on the way and whatnot, but HeroMarine's getting up his own third command center just a little bit later. I do wonder how long Clem actually wants to stick around here, though, because that is the danger for Clem, is that if you overcommit, you can lose a lot of your early game units. You can maybe lose some of the bigger opportunities posed for later on in the game. And HeroMarine can try and jump on this army right here.
Yeah, it's a very mobile army for Clem, so he's gonna use it kind of like you would use stalkers in a PvT with Blink, right? Like you can always run away from the slower army that HeroMarine has in the shape of the tanks. And the units that are going to be exposed at the front that want to run in front of the tanks just by sheer virtue of them being faster are going to run head on onto a Cyclone, which will kind of hard counter them. So for the time being, this is great trades for Clem. I mean, this is everything that he would have wanted. On the other side, he's actually going to jump onto a tank, and he is making some magic happen. If we looked at the units at the units tab before this, we would have seen that Clem was at a disadvantage as far as tank count is concerned. The Ravens were a little bit later, right? Like those tech units like HeroMarine used for surviving basically were in his favor. But after taxing HeroMarine on his way out for his push that we've talked so much about, for this timing that now has gotten a little bit weakened before it arrives, watered down, you could say, Clem is in a good position to hold.
Yeah, he's done economic damage, and I have to commend HeroMarine as, oh god, can even lose some more workers that are building some additional production facilities in the main base. Another worker goes down. 2 slow Vikings landed to chase this Reaper, and even that is going to actually not really end up cleaning this up. Clem is defending easily back at home. He has a flank setup coming in from multiple angles. Auto turret's going to get thrown down over here for HeroMarine, which is going to help out quite a bit with the defense. SCV is being pulled off the line, but with the interference checks just coming out on top of the siege tanks for HeroMarine, it does look like Clem is going to get the cleanup. Even if he loses the air army fight, he easily cleans up the ground force.
Yeah, I think that Marine offered an avenue for the tank to actually kill an extra tank, but yeah, I think he does get the cleanup, but it is a little bit more pricey than he would have hoped. He will still be 7 SCVs ahead, but I think that was great reaction from HeroMarine, dropping the auto turrets pretty much instantly, like you mentioned. Otherwise, it's such a comfortable cleanup from a Clem that does disable the tanks at the front line, right? And he has so many more tanks, and he has that defender's advantage. So great job from HeroMarine, not getting overly distracted by the Reaper. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, as HeroMarine has had some comments about like how players of this caliber can make him play a little bit worse, right? Because they're forcing mistakes, and Clem is exactly looking for that, as he's gonna pounce onto this small contingent of units here. The tank will fall, and the Vikings will be forced to retreat. Small advantages all over the place now for Clem, Raps.
Yeah, I think the one major advantage that HeroMarine had walking out of the first skirmish there was that his Viking count, he absolutely won the Viking war. He killed most of Clem's few Vikings that were coming on out. But at the end of the day, that's only good for doing little siege ups if you know your opponent can't just jump on your army and ignore the whole air superiority fight. We do see that, you know, the Vikings are going to be useful for pushing back small little contingents of Marines and stuff, but this is now going to be a difficult spot where HeroMarine needs to find some way to turn that massive Viking lead into a usable advantage, I would say.
Yeah, and right now he does have the only Raven, so that is also an advantage, especially as it continues to gain that energy, right? It's worth a couple of tanks at least, but Clem is 3 tanks ahead, and I mean a couple of tanks, you know, in terms of like the fight when it happens and what it can disable and make work. But yeah, like a Clem or a HeroMarine does have air superiority by a landslide right now. 7 Vikings, 1 Raven to just the 3 Vikings of Clem. Clem has more tanks, and he has also map control by virtue of having pushed HeroMarine back, so he can move out more freely. He is taking control of the watchtowers. He is spreading himself a little bit thinner, and in that regard, he has a supply depot to spot as well for any drops, etc. So yeah, we look for Clem to continue to make moves stylistically as well, right? Like he's just going to be the player that's going to be looking to apply more pressure.
Yeah. Clem probably also realizing there that 1-1 just finished up there for HeroMarine. He's had a nice little upgrade advantage for a bit of time in this game, but it's finally been evened up. And, well, I think because Clem was also busy trying to get up his extra command centers and obviously just do all of the little pressure points, his 2-2 did get started maybe 15, 20 seconds later. So Now they are going to be relatively tight on those upgrades. Clem is making that push up that we were talking about, though, and HeroMarine, he sees it coming. It's going to be about also identifying where that push comes in from, because this is definitely that stage in the game where the sensor towers are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, and that is why Clem is taking his time. He's kind of rerouting. HeroMarine doesn't know exactly where Clem is, so maybe he will scan at some point soon if he gets a sniff. But Clem has broken the rocks. That will give him much faster access into this third base. HeroMarine is not too ready, so Clem might just pounce on this opportunity. He's gonna stim forward here as the tanks of HeroMarine will siege in time. The Raven does get taken down, and Clem doesn't get too advantageous of a position thanks to that Raven in part, which disables one of the tanks before dying.
Yeah, HeroMarine is going to be able to hold a position over here. Clem is not really able to break that spot, and now Clem going to have to retreat back home with his tail sort of between his legs. He's going to try and look for another angle. No, ends up deciding to just pull back. HeroMarine also snags that Zelnaga watchtower, so if Clem decided to move up and to the left toward, rotating to a different angle, HeroMarine would have seen that coming. That actually probably would not have ended well for Clem. So Clem pulling back, probably in his best interest here.
Yeah, absolutely. And lovely move from Clem as well. As he retreats, he scans exactly where the rest of the army of HeroMarine is, making it much more difficult for Big Gabe to make any sort of a jump onto those tanks, because now they're going to be on high alert. And if you see that army moving towards you as the scan is ongoing, you have time to siege the tanks preemptively. Whereas otherwise, tanks that are unsieged, jumped by a bunch of Marines, if they're in greater numbers, can be pretty deadly. So really good heads up play from Clem there on the retreat, as he has managed to sneak himself into the third yet again. HeroMarine's going to have to kind of run back to defend as fast as possible, but this is going to cost them a lot of SCVs, actually, and the center tower, if Clem wants it. Clem's actually going to let go of that in favor of going into the main instead. At the same time, in the middle of the map, Ravs, they are just kind of positioning, but this is really good for a Clem, who is now lagging a little bit behind in supply after that failed attack.
I mean, Clem's certainly getting a lot of workers with this drop, but at the end of the day, he does still need to just buy himself a little bit of time. Probably wants to draw out the fights a little bit longer before they actually really start to engage, so they can build up that Viking count a little bit more. He's almost caught up in the Viking count. It's 12-9 right now in favor of HeroMarine, but he has still continued to do damage with the few remnants of this drop. Those Marines still going ham, even going to be able to get a depot or two, and this is just a distraction as well, right? Having those Marines constantly harassing, HeroMarine has to divert attention to clean that up, and that makes it harder to take the fight.
Yeah, now it's Vikings on Vikings. HeroMarine will still have the numbers here, but those Vikings can't really fly too close to the Marines. So a lot of posturing going on in the middle of the map, as HeroMarine still holds an advantage in terms of supply. Clem will be a little bit faster to take his fifth base, so there's that, but HeroMarine is right in his tail as far as that's concerned. So yeah, this game is very, very even, and with this kind of stalemate in the middle of the map, HeroMarine might be free to move as well towards that bottom side of the map with this squadron of Marines and make something happen.
Yeah, and Clem is going to spot this out with a few Marines who are sending over to that Zelnaga watchtower, so he knows he does need to probably reposition a few units in that direction. And also, Clem able to identify that in the center of the map, a lot of HeroMarine's army has pulled back a little bit. Sees with the scan that a lot of these tanks are unsieged, so he's going to re-siege up in a slightly different position. HeroMarine, is he actually going to commit down that right-hand side? Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings are going to hold superiority here for HeroMarine as both tanks siege. This is very tense moments. HeroMarine's looking for a drop from those medevac. That's just going to fall flat, and full as well. It's gonna evaporate, giving Clem a way back in terms of supply here on the field. So HeroMarine still with a very good position in the middle of the map. It's very difficult to breach into those locations for Clem, but he is starting to get those Ravens, and Ravens are the way that you can actually reposition. Clem's going to be faster to siege, but he has much less tanks to work with. So HeroMarine with an advantage, and Clem actually having those 3 Marines from the low ground running up is going to give a heads up to HeroMarine that he can actually start sieging this base on the low ground. That's exactly where those tanks are headed, and now Clem with a lot of pressure to break this contain.
Yeah, Clem has a lot of Marines, though, and he actually finds quite a few of the siege tanks from the back end, even able to snipe off 1 or 2 of the Vikings over here. Anti-armor missile is going to make things a little bit scary to continue chasing, but I feel like he's already done a lot of the damage. Question is, was it going to be worth this bottom right-hand base, as that most assuredly does go down?
Yeah, I do wonder if this squadron of units that was so successful on the flank from Clem should have just looked to collapse before HeroMarine had a chance to reinforce here. But now HeroMarine has himself kind of gathered all of his army together and is moving in unison. So Clem has to be pretty careful here. He can still get a little bit of a siege advantage, but that one single tank in the red is still going to be pretty annoying for him to move into.
Clem's army just doesn't have any medevacs here, Cass. It's making it so that these siege tanks are almost one-shotting most of these Marines. It's going to make any fights that happen extremely dangerous. And you can see that Clem is still just focused on maintaining some of that air superiority. HeroMarine has actually been able to keep alive a couple of these medevacs. So every stim that HeroMarine's doing, his units are actually healing from. Clem is gradually doing damage to his own units. Even if they manage to survive the fight somehow, they are just damaged units. They are not going to fare as well for the second round.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And that is very important, right? Like when these fights start happening, yeah, like the medevacs in other matchups, they're really important to sustain during the fight. Here, the problem is pre-fight. It's already Clem that's working at a disadvantage. And now HeroMarine's going to leap into that and try to capitalize. There's more Vikings on the side of Clem to start, but it looks like after focusing a couple of Ravens, the advantage is turning towards the side of HeroMarine. HeroMarine will push these tanks back. One of them will survive in the red, as Clem does have a triple sensor tower setup, so difficult still to breach for HeroMarine without Clem being attentive to it. But yeah, Clem definitely on the back foot now, Raps.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely just sense how Clem is on the back foot, just because it has been HeroMarine that has been dictating the pace of where these engagements end up happening. Clem has been defending for a large portion of this game now, and it really hasn't been many opportunities ever since, you know, the drop that Clem was able to sneak back, was able to get something done. And now we end up seeing HeroMarine darting in for another angle, snipes off some of the forward siege tanks, and Viking count is still going to be favoring Clem over here, so he can force back a lot of the units for HeroMarine. As he forces things back, it looks like HeroMarine is going to go ahead and get out of dodge. Doesn't want to lose too much, lose a single siege tank there just to make sure Clem can't just immediately dart in and start trying to pick off some units.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty even in terms of Ravens, but now Clem with this air superiority, at least on site, actually they have 13 Vikings to 13, so it's still very much anyone's game. And we have the opposing problem with the bio on the air for HeroMarine, though, as he hasn't had an opportunity to kill a lot of his air units. A lot of them are a little bit weaker, so even though they are even in numbers, Clem should have an advantage going into earth skirmishes, and that is really, really important. And what is now keeping Clem in the game, maybe even having him pull ahead just from the something happened in that with that air superiority now that they're both maxed.
Yep, absolutely. We end up seeing also HeroMarine and Clem both trying to do little bits of harassment on opposite ends of the map. It does look like HeroMarine's going to be a lot more successful with his harassment, although it is a more committed attack, even involves a siege tank or two. Clem is going to be able to repair these siege tanks and keep things alive for a little bit longer. HeroMarine finding the extra micro time to go for a medevac drop on top of the tanks to snipe those off. Very well done. Even gets the friendly fire on the other tank. And this is all while they're trying to keep their cameras up on this top left-hand side, because they know that this is where the main armies are. All of the other things are bonuses. This is going to be what matters, and Clem is going to go for it.
Yeah, he's going to go for it. He's going to drop auto turrets as well to displace a lot of this unit. The bio doesn't want anything to do with this. The tanks of Clem are already quick to reposition. He knows that there's no threat. And now they're going to push on forward to siege the mirrored base of HeroMarine, of which he was just displaced from on his side of the map, right? And now he's going to look for this one. This is now looking pretty good for Clem here positionally. He is maxed against a 180 well now, and maxed HeroMarine as well. But yeah, in position, on site, he has the advantage.
I mean, if you look at what the army supply is for both these players, HeroMarine may have remaxed, but he remaxed mostly on Vikings over here, Cats. He's going to win this war, the Viking battle, really, really one-sidedly, but it is 13 tanks to 3 right now. HeroMarine actually doesn't have that much on the ground. I do wonder, is there a point where Clem just says, okay, to hell with the Viking war, you just don't actually have that much on the ground. I feel like I can just push into you.
It's so difficult to say. It's so difficult to judge these numbers. So Clem is actually still trying to contest for the Viking war, like you've called it. He has 6 Vikings in production at a time. HeroMarine had a really good start to that fight as well, because the Vikings of Clem weren't all clumped up. And so that made it so that HeroMarine got the first volley out of his entire army of Vikings against only half a volley of the army of Vikings from Clem. So now Clem looking for damage elsewhere. And like you said, on the ground, HeroMarine not so strong. This is the perfect way, I think, for Clem to capitalize on that, right? Like having him spread thin on the ground, where the R army would really struggle to, say, like split itself to try to deal with this.
Yeah, I mean, this base, even though it is being repaired up to stay alive, it's not mining right now, which is going to be a problem. HeroMarine going to continue to try and find damage wherever he can. He's using the Ravens plus the Vikings, but Seashank's going to get picked off over here. HeroMarine finding some nice counter damage, but it comes at the cost of a lot of his workers. And again, all of the mining at that base. HeroMarine is taking some awkward trades now as the Viking counts are pretty close to each other. But with the anti-armor missile, it does look like HeroMarine's still going to be winning out in the end. At the end of the day, though, I do have to point out, Cats, it's now 47 workers for HeroMarine. It's still an economy. He's got mules as well. It's not anything too bad, but HeroMarine wants to make something happen right now because he knows he's been taking some big hits.
It's auto turret galore right now, Ravi, as both players are going to dropping as many of those as they can. And it's going to be HeroMarine actually sieging his tanks, but in range of Clem's tanks. So HeroMarine will win the air battle as we were expecting. And now looking for a little bit of a cleanup. The Marines are going to try to turn around and try to punish the Vikings as they've landed. But now things are kind of equalized as far as the air fight is concerned, and Clem is still with a supply advantage. He just has to hold here, and he will be in a fantastic position to try to continue to go further in this game and maybe close it out. So HeroMarine looking to pounce right here, right now, and make something happen before Clem can get set up.
Yeah, Clem's siege count got heavily reset, but here we go. The Vikings for Clem end up landing. Anti-armor missile covering a handful of Clem's Vikings, but GG. Clem just has a bit too much. GG, Clem takes the first game. Wow. That was a hectic game, Cats, that I really do feel like had a lot of different points where things actually could have just ended a lot earlier. It was, yes, like a stalemate in a lot of ways, but it was a back and forth stalemate where both these players were just so in each other's faces for so much of that game.
Both players were so good at recognizing every single time that they had the slightest edge. We saw the player push that edge to where they were on the other side. They were punishing, right? Like they were taking the peripheral bases of their opponent. So they were getting that map control in the middle. And both players were always good enough to stabilize and push it the other way around with their defender's advantage. And we saw that tug of war until Clem managed to break HeroMarine. I'm with you. I think that a lot of the problem for HeroMarine was that he didn't have enough on the ground to really break free, like freely and easily. And so he got a little bit too taxed from a Clem that was set up with those tanks on the ground. And then it was up to HeroMarine to close the game right there and then, or die trying. And you know, he died trying this time around.
That's definitely true. It's kind of a funny situation where I do feel like part of it was just the way that the trades end up working out. Like you were saying, Clem just had more of a ground force, so he was able to try and divert smaller little attacks to try and spread HeroMarine thin. But even if you look at the earlier portion of the game, I did feel like Clem was doing a lot better of a job with small groups of units, whereas HeroMarine was actually doing a really great job with the big main army fights, taking interesting or good trades for him. And that's where it felt like HeroMarine was getting a lot of those advantages. So moving into game number 2, one of the things I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for is, one, how is HeroMarine's defense going to be against these tiny little drops as the game goes on, these small little skirmish attempts from Clem? And I think that is actually going to potentially determine whether or not HeroMarine can maintain or can consistently keep a lead in this game.
Yeah, so the headline I read under us, Ravi, that Clem catches HeroMarine skating. I'm not sure exactly what that means or who writes those. They always catch me off guard.
I missed it.
In the bottom left-hand side of the map for Team Liquid and up 1-0, it is Clem on the punch.
And up here on the top right-hand side of the map, the blue Terran player from Mouse Sports, he is HeroMarine. Big Gabe. Still just on tournament run of his life so far after a stellar start to the year with IEM Katowice, getting that top 4. We'd love to be able to carry some of that momentum forward, but if you're speaking of momentum, Clem, I think you were talking about this either during the pre-show or during the break. Clem is the momentum player, right? And I think one of the things you even said is if he's able to build up some momentum in game number 1, things can snowball for Clem a lot of the time in series.
Yeah, I think we expect going into the series that it will be a close one. But I think if it was going to be a 3-0, for me, it would be if Clem manages to take that game 1 and try and snowballs that lead, because I think his momentum-based play that extends above and beyond a single game, right? Like he is actually the type of player to feel himself, to try to be more and more aggressive. Like we saw it at the very start of that game, right? Like how much how much he was starting with a bang with that Reaper, with the SCV, with the micro. I even felt like maybe there was a small opportunity where his SCV in the back could have dragged fire from the first Hellion, and in that moment maybe he could have looked to capitalize, and he jiggled his Reaper, you know, like he maybe wanted to, but so like he's really on point right now. I think looking for every opportunity, like even the way he loads his units into the medevacs, like you know, like he'll keep his more mobile army on the ground, then load the Marines into the medevacs and have those medevacs catch up with his units. Like he doesn't waste any time, especially in the early game, in being efficient, in getting on the other side of the map, in gaining every single second that he can, and in applying the best pressure that he can put on. So up to HeroMarine to withhold. But yeah, Ravi, also like yesterday or it was yesterday on the interview with HeroMarine, he mentioned how, for example, like he is that type of player that you're right, he is going to be very oriented towards like, you know, like the later game and strategy and just coming up with the right build and the right push. But against players like Cyril or Clem, I would, you know, extrapolate that to Clem, I guess. He will sometimes struggle a little bit more because they won't just let him do his thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is, and it's not a shot at HeroMarine. It's actually more of a compliment that he is ascended to the level where he's no longer just a level below Cyril or Clem and a lot of these top-notch players. He's amongst those. Those are the players he is constantly competing with now, but it is a different playing field. It's a different ball game. So it is tough to try and adapt a little bit of your play and say like, okay, no, the way that StarCraft is played at this level is not the same as it was a little bit lower, where HeroMarine was able to just capitalize on some of those advantages and strengths that he had before. Interesting little skirmish over here as we do see HeroMarine slightly outnumbering Clem as some of the reinforcements still coming forward, but Clem at the top of the ramp able to snag a very nice kill on the first Hellion there for HeroMarine, and relatively even damage on both sides. Clem is actually going to be able to come out a little bit ahead with just an extra unit now, though.
Yeah, that is tempo, that is momentum. HeroMarine will have to do something about it. The two Marines want to have something to say in the matter. Is he gonna have to use SCVs or something like that? That would really suck for HeroMarine. But we see here, like, the actions are being taxed. This is where the attention of HeroMarine has to be allocated. Man. He's not macroing as well as he could macro against, or you know, like he's macroing obviously excellently, but not as well as he could macro on the ladder, right? Against a normal player that's not actively trading actions, essentially. Like we saw something similar, for example, for Lambo versus HeroMarine, where Raynor versus HeroMarine was always in HeroMarine's face with backstabbing and stuff. He just has the extra actions to trade. Lambo was not able to do that. And it's not like Lambo doesn't know how to backstab with links. It's just the fact that when you play at a higher level, the higher the level you play, the more difference there's going to be between players and what they can afford to do with their attention and with their actions and how they budget those.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And as we see this drop come in, you actually, as you were pointing all that stuff out, there was a very minor supply block there for HeroMarine. And it's not because HeroMarine's a bad player or anything. It's the 54 up a Tree Zelda supply block. But it's just Clem is taxing him that much by being so in his face, more so than almost any other Terran player would. And you see, Clem is still finding some fairly decent trade pickoffs against, frankly, a larger army of HeroMarine. It's actually a bit unreal how effective Clem is able to be at this early stage in the game.
He is actually insane. And of course, we should also make it a point that this is the opposite is also true for Clem. He's not going to find a player that can withstand his aggression and macro as well as HeroMarine can on the ladder. He's not going to find another Terran counterpart in Europe, right, that can actually keep up with him and put up the number of units from those timings that we're going to see later in the game from HeroMarine. So by all effects and purposes, this goes both ways. We're just talking about the style of Clem right now because it is what's relevant, because it is what's happening, and because it is what we expect from Clem as he saves that Reaper. What a beast.
I'm just blown away by the little micro moves here from Clem. You're absolutely right, though. It is tough to find practice partners of the same level, and it's always going to be interesting to see how they finally end up colliding when they do face off against each other. But we're seeing just these small little maneuvers from both sides, these little edges that are just trying to get every small little win that they can. And Clem is finding, I feel like, a few more in little micro trades, but overall, supplies still pretty even. We see that, you know, a lot of the timings for the build orders and stuff are actually lining up pretty well, where HeroMarine is feeling like, hey, it's time to start landing that their command center. Clem is starting to mine from that low ground a little bit. And at the end of the day, these little skirmishes, it has sort of come out a bit even.
Yeah, but HeroMarine, look at that, the anticipation, right? Like, brilliant maneuver from him, expecting that Clem could sacrifice those Reapers at some point in time. He already has a contingent of units at that ramp. Now, Clem does siege here, which is going to make it annoying for HeroMarine to path around. Clem also has 2 Ravens, but HeroMarine actually has Ravens with more energy and 2 Vikings. So Clem is going to be forced to pull back. And yeah, 6 SCVs died, which gives Clem an advantage going into the mid game as he has 59 workers to the 52 of HeroMarine. But we are now entering the phase of the game where HeroMarine tends to thrive, right? Like, now we are turning to those pushes, to that strategical advantages that HeroMarine looks for, to positional advantages. And HeroMarine right now moving, and unlike the first game, he hasn't been taxed much on that move out.
Yeah, this is turning into a weird situation. A lot of Clem's army has effectively been diverted off and not able to retreat back home to support the reinforcing units popping out over here for Clem. This can turn into an odd flanking position for Clem, that it can weirdly turn into an advantage. But right now, it does mean that HeroMarine is taking a fight where a lot of Clem's army is just straight up missing from it. Is it going to go in his favor? The auto turrets shutting down quite a few of these siege tanks, but the auto or the...
Jeez.
Wow, that is a massive cleanup there.
Yeah, I mean, the auto turrets just came in clutch there for Clem, and I do wonder if HeroMarine could have been a tiny bit more patient because he had the extra Viking, but maybe that's why he wanted to kind of go for it, right? It's like, oh, I have air advantage right now. There's not a lot that you can do. He had more Raven energy as well, so he goes for the disable on the tanks. I wonder myself if auto turrets on his side would have been sufficient, or maybe one auto turret and one one disable. I'm really not sure. HeroMarine is obviously a 10 million times better player than I will ever be, but yeah, I mean, that was definitely a comfortable cleanup for Clem, and now he knows to get back out on the map and apply pressure himself.
Yeah, always tough. We had to see now the Vikings taking out the Ravens there of HeroMarine. HeroMarine goes for the disable on one of the siege tanks here for Clem, but Clem still keeps some of his siege tanks in a pretty offensive position over here. Looks like he is going to end up retreating back with one of his forward tanks, but he's killed 11 more workers during all this. He's rotating around to cut off any reinforcements, and I love the depth of this siege tank position here for Clem. It's actually going to be so annoying and difficult for HeroMarine to break, but he's got to do it. He's going to try and move forward with some of the Marines, but he just ends up losing quite a few of them.
Yeah, and Clem's actually going to dart forward as well without knowing what's behind that. And there was a tank siege. I think at that point, if you're Clem, you maybe just go for it and commit, because he does take like 1 or 2 volleys from the tank regardless, right? But the problem is, if you commit for it and there's a tank on the high ground, then you just lose all of your Marines for absolutely nothing. Or if some Marines pop up on the side of your Marine to defend this tank or something like that. So it's risky, but it was risky in the first place to dart forward. So if you're going to do it, maybe sometimes it's just better to commit. Regardless, HeroMarine is going to fend off the aggression for now, but he is still lagging behind after his own push and after the economic aggression that Clem has put on throughout the game.
Yeah, I mean, you see that Clem has to retreat back, but it's not even just the supplies. Obviously, this is an army supply lead where just Clem has a larger army, which is going to make him defending anything that he has to defend against with HeroMarine trying to do some sort of move out or push or pressure a lot easier. But Clem was able to take a 4th base during all this, whereas HeroMarine is just now starting it because he was basically just trying to focus on defending. But even just the 2-2 upgrades, look at the massive lead he has actually on those 2-2 upgrades. Armory only just finished up here for HeroMarine. He's still trying to scrape together the resources and the funds to start up his own 2-2. Finally, we're starting to see it get initiated. But at this point, the next fight, the next couple of skirmishes, I wouldn't doubt if Clem actually just has 2-2 versus 1-1.
Yeah, and also the upgrade for the tank as well is going to be available, the first one at least. So it's really, really good for Clem. And those are all very great observations, Ravi, as heading into this engagement, we might be on similar army supplies, 92 to 92, actually, as I speak. But yeah, Clem is going to gather all of those advantages. He just has to be careful not to take the engagement before those kick in. And after those kick in, if he can look for an engagement that's even, that's not into a crappy position, then he should absolutely look for it.
Really, really nice pullback there from Clem. That actually could have been very scary. All of his siege tanks on siege, a big stim up there from HeroMarine nice and early on, but Clem pulls back to the high ground. This could be a bit dangerous though. Clem going to lose a large chunk of his army over there. Both siege tanks going down. Though Clem is going to have his siege tanks in range of this fight, I'm not so sure the same can be said of HeroMarine. You see skirmishes on both sides and supplies actually even up quite a bit. Clem is going to have a very good Viking count lead now for the following couple of fights.
Yeah, but I mean, the Viking count is not going to amount to much if you don't have tanks to support that. And it's 2 tanks against 10 right now. So HeroMarine, if he can get in position with these tanks, he will be impossible to displace. There are no Ravens on the map either for Clem. So he really has to hold his ground with his 2 tanks. He really has to make a stance. And it's his Marines that are going to provide him with the ability to try to do that. But as the first tank falls, the Marines are going to have to fall back to the second one. Another tank arrives here for Clem as he continues to try to fight for the air superiority. He might have to pull SCVs or something because HeroMarine is relentless here, and now it's gonna go for it as Clem does have the better arc, but tank fire on the back for HeroMarine is superior. Medevac count is good here for Clem, who was trying to take advantage of his former air superiority with his Liberators, and that's brilliant, but the problem is all of those Vikings are now gone. So HeroMarine resetting that has now the air superiority with just the 2 Vikings he has. Looking difficult for Clem.
It really is, and one of the biggest advantages here for Clem is about to disappear. 2-2 finishes up now. All of those fights that Clem was taking, all the Marine versus Marine wars and everything that was happening, that was all with Clem having an upgraded advantage. He no longer has that. He's still going to be losing out on a little bit of the Viking war, although the Liberator TPS helping out a bit, and now Liberator is able to push back these tanks.
Yeah, I mean, that was brilliant from HeroMarine. That single Marine was turning the tides in that 2v2 of the Vikings. And now Clem, as he trickles down Vikings 2 by 2, that is the units that are allowing him or disallowing him to push with his Liberators. The Marines of HeroMarine are going to puzzle the Planetary Fortress, but the Planetary Fortress does output a lot of damage. It will end up falling, but at the cost of HeroMarine's contingency, as Clem is going to clear it out and push on forward, get himself out of here. And I mean, that looks good for HeroMarine, but now he has to hold on the defense. Clem is going to look to punish right now. He just lost economy. He understands that. That's 17 workers. He does have a new PF, so maybe a little bit less pressure than I thought to make something happen out on the map, but I'm still a little bit surprised that he's not just darting forward to the other side.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. It's not even necessarily that I think he has to, because they're actually on a relatively even number of workers over here, but it is just the fact that he cleaned up so much army. He was ahead in Marines up until a few seconds ago. He's ahead in Siege Tanks right now. He's ahead in Vikings, and he has Liberators. I feel like these are all the recipes for Clem being able to take an advantage. If that wasn't enough, he's also about to finish up his +3 weapons and take an upgrade lead yet again.
Yeah, and now he is looking for it, and he's actually gonna get positioned. In spite of him being spotted, those 3 Marines were scouting HeroMarine, but at the same time, they scout on behalf of HeroMarine that Clem is aware of his base. And when Clem is aware of that base, he's gonna go for it. You better be sure of that. So HeroMarine looking for space to move out on the map and make something happen while there is a little bit of a base trade, but Clem too smart, already pre-sieging some of those tanks, leaving just the rest of the tanks at the base of HeroMarine. HeroMarine is gonna tap out maybe a little bit preemptively, but yeah, maybe a little. That's the end of that sentence, actually.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I don't think anyone could deny that HeroMarine was at a disadvantage in that game. He was not mining from his 4th base. He was having trouble cleaning things up. He was trying to do the wraparound or the runaround with some Marines, and Clem was finding it. So there were a lot of things not going HeroMarine's way, but I'm kind of with you that I think there are situations where I could see a lot of players still try and play that one out. So maybe a little bit of a sign or showcasing that HeroMarine's not feeling good about this series, and actually a really good indicator of how much momentum I'd say Clem has actually been able to build up. I feel like the end of game 1, very, very close game. Game 2, it felt like so many little things were going well for Clem at the start of the game, and HeroMarine was fighting back, he was firing back, but the end, the last couple of minutes, it really felt like Clem was able to just suddenly seize control of a lot of that game. He was just able to take better trades across the board.
In a snap too, right? Because HeroMarine did have an advantage as he was pushing out with 10 tanks against 2. And he did put enough urgency on that push where he was actually making stuff happen. He was gaining ground. He was displacing the tanks of Clem without any Ravens whatsoever, just by sheer force of having more stronger anchor units in the shape of the tanks, and does get the planetary forces that he went for. He does rush a little bit too fast, perhaps, just because he wants to get it before the Liberators come fully into play, identifying perhaps that he was going to lose the air fight. So he sacrifices a ton of Marines in that process, and Clem does well to get on the other side of the map, and that's really good to siege, and that's really good to prevent the counterattack. Was it game over though? I'm not sure. I mean, HeroMarine still did just kill 1 base. He was lagging behind like 15 supply or so. He was a little bit behind in upgrades. So like you said, undeniably he was behind. and the position wasn't gonna get prettier in that base, but he still had stuff to work with, right? And it is PvT, it is the matchup where you're gonna play a little bit more positionally, and those tanks are worth their weight in gold. Also, maybe the lack of ravens, like doesn't give you confidence to kind of like displace those units to kind of get out and break out. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like at this stage, maybe HeroMarine just doesn't want to waste energy on that game, doesn't want to waste mental space, and just wants a reset and see if he can bring it back. But this is now gonna have to be a 3-0 in his favor to turn it around. So let's see if he can do it. Give him your energy. It is for Mousesports for over 11 years, the longest player to ever be on a team in StarCraft 2, maybe in all of esports. It is HeroMarine.
And up here on the top left-hand side of the map, representing Team Liquid, our red Terran player who is not ready to give up the crown as the best Terran player in Europe. He is Clem, sitting up 2-0 at match point. I feel like even just going back to some of the earlier moments in that second game, Cats, I wouldn't even mind doing like a Juniper Networks replay segment on the first fight that they took, where it was the very interesting trades. Both players had relatively evenish armies. HeroMarine going for the attack on Clem's side of the map, finding Clem where a lot of his Marines were not even able to participate in the fight, but just the disables and the interference matrices versus the auto turrets. I feel like that was a really interesting moment. And man, I wouldn't even mind going back and rewatching some of that, because I feel like that was actually one of the big turning point moments in that game for me.
Yeah, I mean, that was huge. I think that the engagement on the side of Clem towards the end as well was really cool too. Like when there's just 2 Vikings trickling out at a time, and those Liberators trying to make stuff happen, and that one Marine trying to sway the Earth fight. And so, yeah, I mean, there's been so many moments just because of how these two stack up against each other, and how positional and how like good tactically and with those timings HeroMarine is, and just how amazing Clem is throughout trading, at microing, at applying that pressure. It's a clash of styles that is just beautiful to watch. And yeah, we could do 30 Juniper replays on it.
Absolutely. Well, we get ready to move into game number 3. And again, we have to go back a little bit to momentum. And if Big Gabe can halt some of that momentum, the one thing I will say actually momentum-wise is, well, I was going to say something, but I feel like this is already, again, another nice start here. Clem has been able to consistently use that first SCV to bully the first Reaper over here for HeroMarine, to delay that command center on the low ground for quite a bit of time. Just those little edges. Clem's going to be happy with that. But I was going to say, one nice thing of tapping out early is the longer that game goes on, probably the more comfortable that Clem ends up feeling. Just because, you're playing in a game where you're ahead, you're just going to have more tools and resources available. You're probably going to feel better. I would say, arguably, Clem would be building up even more momentum. So I kind of like the idea of HeroMarine halting some of that momentum building feeling. But this is already a really nice start for Clem again.
Yeah, exactly. Like HeroMarine goes in, but at the risk of losing those he doesn't get the second SCV either. At the risk of losing those 2 Reapers, and with that, he's gonna lose map control, and that is 2 Reapers going down. Clem hasn't lost any Reapers yet, so he is comfortable going out on the map as fast as possible. He is gonna waste no time. Whereas HeroMarine was really trying to be sneaky, like avoiding those bushes and whatnot in case those Reapers of Clem were positioned there and waiting for him. And now it's Clem with the delayed CC from earlier that's gonna be further capitalized on by this unit. And on the other side, HeroMarine tries to do the same with a single Helium, but the SCV has already finished the CC. And now with the Cyclone, HeroMarine trying to make something happen. The SCV will not finish the CC. That is gigantic, because that CC is going to be very difficult to finish with a Mind here now. But okay, with less firepower, it should be able to eventually. On the other side, the Helium has been microed really well to net him a 2 loss of units of SCVs there on the side of HeroMarine. So yeah, finally the Cyclone will displace the 2 remaining units of Clem methodically by killing the mine first, and HeroMarine finally gets to finish his command center on the low ground.
Walk across Widow Mine is a fascinating choice. That man, I mean, it was doing a really good job of bullying that Cyclone back and making it so it couldn't just use its hit points to clean everything up really easily. But yeah, very weird trades on both sides. The Hellion definitely putting in some massive work there to make sure that HeroMarine is not crazy far behind in this. But now HeroMarine goes for his own little drop harass, and he should be able to at least snag 1 or 2 SCVs over here if he micros this well, right?
No, we'll see. We'll see. There is a bunch of Marines here, and actually HeroMarine maybe respecting them a little bit too much before he even sees the Cyclone. The Cyclone of HeroMarine will lock onto the Raven and put on some nice damage, but not ultimately be able to finish it off. And now with the Cyclone that Clem has here on location, he can definitely push this back. So I'm a little bit surprised that HeroMarine is looking to re-engage now, but was just happy to retreat before the Cyclone showed up, if that makes sense, right? So
yeah. Wow, funny trades on both sides. I actually don't know that any additional units died during that. Maybe like one Reaper or something during all of that, but it was actually a lot of micro on both sides. And at the end of the day, neither one of them end up losing a whole lot outside of hit points on their units. Clem is going to come back in with a little Reaper Scout, just confirms, okay, you got your mineral saturation, all that stuff. You got your Siege Tank sieged up. Nothing too crazy happening on that side, but we finally get to move into kind of that mid-game stage. And I would say, even though Clem does have a little worker lead over here, the bigger thing I would say is just that Clem got his third command center started a lot earlier yet again, which I think has been another consistent trend we've been seeing in this series.
Yeah, really cool readjustment as well from Clem, just to not lose that Reaper, and that is kind of the thing that differentiates him from most other players. The tank fires. The instinct of most players would be click back with the Reaper as fast as possible outside of the base, and then the normal pathing of the Reaper would have made it so that the tank kills it, but instead Clem hugs the wall first, then retreats, and that makes it so that the second tank shot doesn't connect. And now HeroMarine on offense here. He's going to look to make something happen. This is what he's good at. He has the Raven energy. Clem looking to meet him out on the map. Not sure if that's the way. I think you just got to delay landing that turret for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, he is definitely outnumbered in terms of siege tanks. Clem is just now getting his second siege tank over here, so he's going to be doing some nice catch-up. It's now 2 to 3 in terms of this side of the map, but that one Cyclone that Clem was not able to pick off is going to be very, very annoying. HeroMarine's going to be able to lock onto any of those air units a little too far forward. He's going for the interference matrix on one of the tanks. Other tank not sieged up.
Yeah, this time around, he does drop 2 of those auto turrets as well. Clem has a few more to drop, but one of the Ravens actually hasn't spent all of its energy. Will it matter? As one of the tanks of Clem sieges in the back, and he looks to be having a decent time clearing this out, but no, one of those tanks survives with nearly any HP to its name, and with the Vikings landed, HeroMarine is making some space to continue to push on forward. Now going after the tank. Very good focus firing and very good offering of units. They're offering always the one with the most HP to tank. And now Clem in a lot of trouble. He's going to have to pull SCVs. Here they come. The tank is going to siege, but it's going to get focus fire down by another tank that's unsieged, plus the siege one. And now with the Viking, I think Clem will clear this, but it will be hell of expensive.
It is certainly not the kind of trades that Clem was looking for. He is eventually going to clean everything up, but you can see the worker supplies really tell the tale. 23 workers going down there for Clem, 36 to 57. He's going to try and chase down this one final remaining siege tank as some of these units stem forward, but as he sees more units coming out over here for HeroMarine, he loses some of those important area units, losing probably another one of the Ravens potentially over here. Will eventually force HeroMarine a bit further back, but man, Clem is playing in dire straits now.
Yeah, he's in a lot of trouble. 20 workers behind. He's in my opinion further behind than HeroMarine was when he left that last game. Yeah. But this is, I mean, this is recoverable if HeroMarine runs into a trap, if he doesn't do well in the next engagement, if Clem can somehow use his army supply advantage right here, right now. But it seems very, very difficult. Yeah, I mean, that engagement, that's also could be a Juniper replay moment because,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, so much happened. And I feel like if this Raven right here hadn't been so lazy and had dropped all of his energy right away, then Clem has a lot of an easier time holding. But, you know, sometimes it's difficult to drop those auto turrets when in the midst of chaos. Like, they're not the easiest, most responsive unit in StarCraft. Or most responsive animation, I guess, because you know they require its own awkward pixel type thing.
Yeah, I do have to commend HeroMarine during that fight. He was actually doing a lot of really nice stuff, especially with the focus fire and his siege tanks. I don't know if you saw, there was a single Reaper from earlier on in the game that Clem had that tried to come into flank, and I think he came in with that in hopes. It may have just been an F2A move or something, but I think he was also maybe hoping it would absorb 1 or 2 of the tank shots, but HeroMarine just wasn't having any of it. Like, the Reaper was the last thing to die in the fight, despite being the closest thing to the tank, just because HeroMarine was doing a great job with the focus fire throughout that entire fight.
Yeah, and you know what, Ravi? Maybe I withdraw my prior statement because Clem is keeping up just fine in supply. He has now made up for a lot of the workers that he was lagging behind, though not completely. He's only 12 behind, whereas before he was 20, and you would have expected for that advantage to grow. HeroMarine does drop his fourth considerably sooner, but Clem also has an advantage in terms of upgrades. HeroMarine is going to be catching up on that, and Clem doesn't actually have an armory, so HeroMarine will be fine heading into 2-2, just about perfectly even. But Clem is kind of keeping up to where, you know, like the next engagement could very well dictate or give him back the lead. He's still behind, but not by a ton.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think that Clem is in this game still, but I think the things that I like going for HeroMarine are going to be like you said, the command center that's there, but also the production facilities. We've gotten an extra couple of barracks that have been already completed here for HeroMarine. He's getting those reactors about to be finished up, so his number of Marines that he's going to be outputting is going to be a good bit higher now than Clem. So he should be able to have an economic and also just a straight up macro advantage coming into this, as Clem is going to be finishing up his fourth base. And I will say also, the armory finished up for HeroMarine. He has not started up 2-2 just yet. So Clem is getting a nice little advantage there as well.
That is very true. Now, as we speak, HeroMarine is actually going to start his 2-2. But yeah, you're on point. I mean, the production facilities and the investment into economy for HeroMarine is still there. The investment into production, into macro, like you've called it, I think it's very, very true. As now HeroMarine is faster as well to his fourth, Clem is going to take his own. So Clem right now may be playing for that max out stage. If he can actually get there, then he will be in a great position. Right now, both players are kind of shadowing each other, trying to avoid the circles on the map as fast for as long as possible, so breaking rocks and whatnot just to facilitate movement once they want to charge on forward. And this is going to mean that one of the bases of Clem is going to get taken down, and actually Clem choosing to retreat instead of going for any sort of a counterattack might just be the nail in the coffin here. He does have 2 tanks as an anchor to buy himself some time, but HeroMarine doesn't want to give him any of that. The Raven is going to output a little bit of help here on the side of Clem as it disables 2 of the tanks. Will it be enough? As yes, from behind, Clem will arrive onto the rest of the fight, and he actually clears HeroMarine. I mean, supply doesn't tell the whole story here. As far as army supply, they are now even. But HeroMarine still, with his wonderful macro and everything, all the advantages that you were outlining right before this fight happened, Ravi, is still in the lead.
Yeah, it's a fascinating situation where a lot of HeroMarine supply is in production right now. That's why the army supply was able to even up so quickly there for HeroMarine. But Clem actually has a larger army out in the map in the center over here, ready to fight, already on HeroMarine's side of the map, already by this planetary fortress. And oh man, Clem actually gets sieged up in a very, very nice position here.
This is a really nice position indeed, and HeroMarine has to be careful not to lose too much for this defense. Remember that HeroMarine already took down the base of Clem, as he's gonna pounce onto this tank. Potentially, Clem needs to pull SCVs most likely if he wants to have a chance of saving this tank. It's a little bit late of a pull-off, but actually HeroMarine commits onto the Liberator that I think is a little bit less trending perhaps, but it doesn't seem to matter. And now Clem with this position, if he can kill the SCVs here, if HeroMarine takes a bad fight, it could actually swing back in Clem's favor. Let's see what HeroMarine does as he's gonna encroach onto this army now with a big surround. It's gonna be a 180. The tanks are sieged still, and they will get to output fire onto Clem's tanks and displace him completely. HeroMarine now with a very strong position, not only taking that fight but saving his base. Yeah, he's in great shape.
Yeah, being able to save the base was absolutely massive, and Clem is trying to stim around. He's trying to find another angle. It looks like he really just still feels like he needs to get some damage done, but he's losing more units, and that is going to be a bit too much, even for Clem. HeroMarine putting one on the board. Maybe the beginning of a reverse comeback. Maybe can HeroMarine stop some of that momentum of Clem?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was a great game from him. Again, advantages going back and forth, and Clem stabilizing maybe a little bit better than he had any right to. But no less, a really, really good game from HeroMarine. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we get back, the resolution of the series. We are back, and Gabriel El Grande has taken a map here, Ravi. So it's looking pretty exciting. They're looking pretty evenly matched. I mean, that map number 2 ended a little bit abruptly, but game number 3 was all Gabriel here, and he did fantastic to bring it back. Can he actually complete the comeback?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was truly the kind of game that I was expecting HeroMarine to try and take some victories off of Clem with, where it was Gabe having this pre-prepared kind of opening or this thing that he was going to do, even after kind of honestly not a great start with the Reaper micro and everything, but he hit a timing. Clem did not know that it was coming and had a really hard time responding to it. HeroMarine was able to get a big lead and secure that into a victory. I mean, that was truly what I sort of expect from Gabe, with just being really, really good at preparation and knowing his opponents.
I absolutely agree. Alrighty. Well, here is the man that you're talking about. He needs 2 more games. He still needs your energy. It is for Mouseboards, HeroMarine.
And up here in the top right-hand side of the map, still sitting at match point, he is sitting up 2-1, the Red Terran player from Team Liquid, Clem. You know what I always appreciate about Gabe, Cats, is that you know how massive someone is when they don't feel the need to have their camera super close to overcompensate and like make themselves look bigger. Gabe puts himself in an even larger size room, if that was physically possible, so that he appears just normal sized. And I think it really just goes to show how much he's considerate to people. Make sure that people don't feel inadequate just seeing the massive size that is Gabe.
That is just really a nice gesture out of him, and yeah, I think we all appreciate it as well. Joining Team Mouse, mice known to be small animals, right? So he's always trying to compensate for everyone else, just because he's he's basically Mother Teresa.
Yeah, I mean, what a humble guy, man. What a humble guy.
Absolutely.
Always appreciated. Oh, man. Well, that humble guy was able to take a pretty decisive victory. And I think that is something that we have to go back to with momentum. Clem is a momentum-based player. I think that was a pretty one-sided game. So is that going to be the kind of game that halts a bit of Clem's momentum? I know, again, we keep saying Clem momentum, Clem momentum, Clem momentum. And I will give Clem credit. I think one of the biggest things that he's grown, one of the biggest ways he's grown as a player in the last 2 years, was that he has become less momentum focused, that he is able to keep some of his best play going, even after taking like a loss here or there in a series.
Yeah, but even when you listen to his interviews, that's not what he wants to do a lot of the time. Like we interviewed him, I think, a couple of days ago, if not yesterday, and he was talking about like how that's not how I like to play. Like, I really like to be out there. I really like to. So if he is playing to his biggest strength, that is when he is gonna be playing off of momentum. That is when he is gonna be riding that wave. I agree. He needs, and he has gotten much better over time at kind of restraining himself and holding back when he has to. But if he can go with it, he will ride that wave. So he is definitely gonna be looking for those edges every single game.
Yeah. Just a quick note on the openings. We do have a faster Widowmine coming out over here for HeroMarine, which is, I think, a really cool adjustment. This is something that can be really nice. Usually I see the Widowmine defensively. I have not often seen what Clem did in the previous game, where he was getting the Widowmine offensively and walking it across the map. Yeah, but the defensive one, I think, is a great reaction to just how in HeroMarine's face Clem has been playing this series.
Yeah, I mean, that game was so action-packed. I remember that point that you made on the Widowmine offensively, and I wanted to touch on that, but it was so action-packed that I never found the room to, so I'm glad you bring it back up, because, yeah, I mean, that was just, I think, off of Clem killing 2 Reapers on the other side, that he thought, okay, like, this was intended to be a defensive Widowmine. I was intended to sit on it like HeroMarine is doing right now, but now I have an opportunity to go out on the map because I just killed 2 Reapers for free, right? So then he just said, like, called all man to action, and the Widowmine served as one of those in the calling. So yeah, he was just trying to, again, ride the momentum with whatever he had.
Yeah, I know. I actually really like that. It kind of goes to show, again, it's like a little bit of that adaptation that Clem is able to do in the games. He's not necessarily saying, oh, I'm pre-preparing that I'm going to send this walk this Widowmine across the map. It's, you know, in the heat of the moment, Clem is very good at making those kind of decisions that just keep that momentum going. Speaking of aggression, though, while we didn't see a lot of super early game aggression here from Clem, he is moving across the map with 2 Cyclones and a Banshee. The Banshee, a lot less common to see these days in TVT. Do occasionally get to spy a little bit, but that Widowmine snags a kill on the Hellion, and the Banshee moves in from behind.
Yeah, the Banshee will pick off 1 SCV. So that's not, you know, amazing for it, as it has already gotten spotted and there's already Cyclones out. But yeah, as far as that Widowmine, yeah, I completely agree. And don't try it at home, you know, like Widowmines are not usually going to be very good offensively for so many reasons, right? Like offensively, there's going to be SCVs available to detonate the Widowmine. There's going to be Marines available. There's as defensively, you're mostly covering for Reapers, for Hellions, for units that are going to run into it and are going to want to go fast. They're going to stall the momentum. There's multiple units that are going to be clumped up. On offense, you have to burrow the Widowmine. On defense, it's already burrowed where you want it, right? Like, it's just not an offensive unit. But defensively, early on, it can do a lot.
I am fascinated by the fact that the Banshee went all the way home. Yeah. I really expected it to, like, stick around. I know that there's, like, a little bit of time you have before the first couple of Vikings come out, but yeah, well, the Raven now for HeroMarine does get to just freely move across the map, do a little auto turret harassment and everything. But the Banshee is going to head back out on the map now, I think.
Yeah, cool position auto turret as well from Big Gabe, trying to gain some space, making the SUVs run as far as possible. So identifying that, you know, that it wasn't going to be able to be dealt with the units on side, just drops it really deep into the mineral line. At the same time, this Raven is being hunted for, but it will not be found. So good job from Big Gabe. Also note he didn't commit all of his energy like we often see, or like 2 auto turrets and whatnot dropped. Just drops the 1 and then retreats, right? So he still has a lot of utility to be gained in the engagements from this Raven, and you love to see that. Great move.
Yeah, great moves from both these players with the positional play of all their units. The Raven gets out of there alive. Clem is doing a great job hunting things down. HeroMarine looking to hunt the hunting units, but Clem doing a good job evading them. Just so much little positional stuff going on during those little skirmishes in the middle of the map, even though nothing actually ends up really dying there. Now we end up seeing, though, Clem is looking to get aggressive yet again. The Banshee rolls on into that third base. The Vikings plus the Raven are going to make this extremely difficult for a whole lot to get done. But did Clem pull the units out of position for just barely long enough?
Yeah, but at the same time, HeroMarine says, whoa, that Banshee move, it was a little bit sketchy. It was a little bit weird. I don't know why you would think it would work. So what he does is he instantly anticipates that Clem must be on the other side, that there's no other reason for that Banshee to make that silly move other than to pull him out of position. So what does he do? Instead of getting pulled out of position, he goes further into position and is completely ready to absorb the first attack of Clem, as this Hellion is trying to be annoying here, and it will manage to get an SCV if it wants to, but not paying attention. On the other side, Clem is not going to be paying attention either, and will lose a few units. They're not able to retreat, not fast enough, which is a little bit uncommon, especially for Clem in this stage of the game. And with that, Big Gabriel is going to look to move across the map.
Yeah, the 2 Reapers will still find a little bit of poking and prodding, annoying damage over here until the Cyclone eventually cleans them up. But like you said, really, really nice moves there from HeroMarine. I mean, to give you an idea of how unintuitive that can probably feel, it is the sense of someone is punching you on the left side of your face, and you say, you're punching me on the left, you're probably going to hit me on the right in a moment. And you decide to block on the right instead of the left. Like, it's really, really good anticipation of exactly what Clem is going to go for. And being able to shut that down so nicely, it does mean that Clem now going to be facing off against HeroMarine, who has a slightly faster 1-1, combat shield finishing slightly faster and everything. Is HeroMarine actually going to do that move out? Is he actually going to do anything with all these timings lining up just a little bit faster than Clem's?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like that magician's trick, you know, where they make you look on one hand and then you're you know, HeroMarine was just like, I'm looking at the other hand, buddy.
Yeah, I love it. It does look like, for the most part, though, HeroMarine did not want to move out. I was going to say it's kind of interesting because the supplies are leading in favor of Clem right now, but it's really just a handful of Marines. And I think at the time that I was looking at a minute ago or 30 seconds ago, the Siege Tank count was pretty even. The Viking count was actually leading a little bit for HeroMarine. Now it's all kind of evened up. It's not a huge deal on either end, but we do just get to see both of these players sort of establishing their 4th bases, or soon to be establishing the 4th base over here for HeroMarine. Still needs to finish that up and float it over.
Yeah, 2-2 for the bio and +1 for those tanks is all being researched on either side at pretty much the exact same pace, as a couple of Marines are actually going to get a nice knife there onto the sensor tower. That'll put a little bit of fear on Big Gabe before he can move out. He's going to have to reestablish that vision there. So nice, gains a little bit of time here. As we see now, the units lost that pretty even throughout the game as well. And yeah, this game is very much stabilizing and looking to go into the later stages like we might expect of a map like this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in this situation, we have seen that Clem is the one that wants to be a little bit more aggressive with small squadrons of units, especially I think we saw this a lot more in game number 1. When the game was kind of more evened up and everything, Clem was the one that was out on the map with little medevac drop harassments like this, or hitting on both sides at the same time, things along those lines. Whereas HeroMarine really doing a great job with the defensive play and eventually finding those really, really fine timings to hit when he has small little advantages one way or another.
Yeah, so Clem again with a squadron here is not going to be deterred by the first tank shot and will move on forward. That's a great move. No fear in his mind here, as he's going to get 6 SCVs and a tank for his troubles. A few Marines will go down, and now he will look to evacuate as the medevacs will outpace those Vikings with their boost. So yeah, a great poke from Clem.
Whoa. Wow, both the medevacs end up surviving since the damage is distributed between the two medevacs, but this is Clem's, mantra is set up an attack on the left so you can hit on the right. And we already see that a lot of HeroMarine's army is up on the top left-hand side. Is he going to be prepared for this? He does have some army down here in the bottom right. Is it going to be enough, though? This is a very large number of siege tanks here for Clem.
Yeah, and that was so unfortunate for HeroMarine. With a great poke, they're looking for the Raven, and the Raven survives with almost no HP. Though that Raven with almost no HP gets 2 interference matrices that allow for those 2 tanks to be taken down for free as well. So, like a slightly more successful poke, 1 extra Marine shooting at that Raven would have saved the life of those tanks, or at least made it more expensive for Clem to take those down. At the same time, HeroMarine is still maxed out. Clem is still doing Clem things on the other side, and this game will continue to transpire for a little while.
Yeah, HeroMarine will be able to clean this up and snipes off that medevac. They'll soften up by the missile turret, but this is all little distractions. So now HeroMarine had a harder time maybe collapsing on that army for Clem that was overstaying its welcome for a little bit. Clem gets back home safely, and, well, now he's got, I will say, a pretty absurd number of siege tanks right now, Cats. He has gone hard on the siege tanks instead of actually making Marines, because they're at the maxed out point, right? So it's actually going to be a very light number of Marines here for Clem in these next couple of fights.
Yeah, and that is a little bit scary, especially if he's not already in a position with those siege tanks where he anticipates his opponent's going to be. Because if they meet out on the map, the Marines are going to be able to trade pretty well against those siege tanks before they can siege. At the same time, if he wants to defend, I mean, this number of siege tanks is fantastic to spread himself out over multiple bases, but that doesn't sound like the usual Clem approach. As now HeroMarine is actually the one to get into a very good position first. The air fight is also, for the time being, favorable for HeroMarine, as he also gets the anti-armor missile. However, Clem does have a couple of more Vikings to work with, so once this wears out, or even just now, he feels confident enough to push on forward, and HeroMarine is cautious enough to displace his own army.
Really interesting moves over here, as obviously the armies are kind of skirmishing with each other, but Clem actually started up a Hellbat as he's also getting up Smart Service. Smart Service I totally get. He's also getting up all of his bio upgrades and everything, but I do wonder, as he's not really replacing any of the Marines he's losing, is he looking to basically just transition the composition of his army and actually start just, weeding out Marines entirely?
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, we still have 5 barracks in the main with reactors, but not that much more, right? So, and double starport already. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like he wants to be very Marine heavy throughout. He is at only 8 Marines at the moment. So, yeah, I think you're right, Ravi. I mean, he is still upgrading 3-3 bio, though. So it seems a little bit, not really consistent with his upgrading and his overall game plan. And I think the Hellbat was probably just a mistake.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, since one Hellbat is not really does a composition it is not make. But, well, that one Hellbat is going to go down. It's going to be replaced with Ravens, and I think that is really going to be the key component of this. I actually like the idea of still having those 3-3 upgrades, because after you lose an army, Marines are going to be what you make.
Yeah, this is SEAL Team 6. There are the last 8 remaining Marines, and oh, this is so sad. That is just brutal. The 3 remaining are make it
no.
one to tell the tale of the last one.
I know. They tried to escape and just say, I'm out of here, I'm defecting, but you know, they're already deep in enemy territory. This last Marine is going to go down for one missile turret. He blew up the building before he passed on, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that is going to be replaced, like you were saying, by further air units here in the shape of 3 Vikings and a Raven to max out on the side of Clem. So Clem with a much stronger army if he can get sieged, if he can get in position. HeroMarine has also been bleeding out his Marines and not looking to replace them at 12 only. But yeah, he is, I think, set up a little bit better to produce. No, actually, both players just with 5 barracks with reactors. So neither of them really looking to go back into that Marine gameplay.
Really funny how many Vikings both these players have. And they've been staying even with all these trades. Although Clem, kind of like you were pointing out before, does have a little bit of a Raven lead, even adding on 2 more compared to the 3 that HeroMarine's adding on. Clem is still going to have like a 4 or 5 Raven lead here. So that might make a bit of a difference. How do you, in this, okay, let's imagine, Cats, that both of these armies just straight up have a big fight. What do you do with the Ravens? Do you throw it on auto turrets? Do you throw it on interference matrices on like the tanks? Or like, how do you spend that energy?
Yeah, I think you throw interference matrices into the tanks, like the ones that are further front first, and then you kind of just spam auto turrets as the fight is progressing, right? So like I think that's probably the way should they fight just like head on. Obviously you're gonna look for anti-armor missiles onto the air as both players are gonna be fighting for air control, so that's gonna be the main thing when poking and promoting. It's the spell that we're gonna see most often. When the real fight, when the big one, when the clash for positioning on the ground happens, that's when we're likely to see those interference matrices. So yeah, Clem with an advantage on the air there, on the Raven count, like you were saying, and that is scary because he also has the greater economy, as it's actually going to be HeroMarine looking to displace Clem here with a very good anti-armor missile and a couple of interference matrices. He manages to leapfrog forward with some of his tanks. He does have the greater tank numbers here on site at the moment, so it is looking a little bit dangerous as now the big fight will transpire. A lot of auto turrets going down on the side of Clem. There is going to be the Viking engagements, Viking on Viking, but the orange Vikings are not going to stand a chance against the full armored Vikings on the side of HeroMarine, and with that, HeroMarine gains a 20 supply lead.
This is, even with 8 Vikings coming out at a time over here for Clem, he does actually replenish his Viking count at a like phenomenal rate over here. Is he just going to continue to just remax on the Vikings? He's definitely going to end up losing a base, maybe 2 in the process. But can he actually stabilize over here? He does have a pretty high number of Vikings, and all of his Vikings are undamaged. He gets the anti-armor missile on HeroMarine's Vikings, so that kind of evens up those trades. In a very, very slight 1 Viking lead now in favor of Clem. He ends up losing one of his bases during all that. I think it's also important to note that even though both these players have similar army supplies and everything, Clem does have like 30 more workers right now than HeroMarine.
Yeah, and that has been the case for a while, but he spent all of his extra bank in that last remax, right? So now he only has 1,000 of extra resources, where before he was starting to bank up a little bit more, but HeroMarine has run out of minerals himself, as he has been bleeding out some units. I've been staring at the production tab, looking for liberators perhaps on the side of Clem, as he does now have air control, and at some point you gotta decide, okay, like you do have more tanks than me, but I do have air control, so maybe now is the time. He also was forced to make some Marines that we clearly saw he didn't want to make before, just in order to get back to that max supply a little bit faster. And when all is said and done, Ravi, the 70 workers to the 46 are gonna start making a big difference here for Clem over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is important to also note that both these players, not only do they have all the planetaries, the multiple planetary fortresses around the map, they both also have 10 orbital commands. So for scans and also mules, both of these players can afford to have slightly fewer workers. But it does also kind of mean that all of the energy is probably going to scans. Interference matrices on these siege tanks over here, as Clem is just bullying back HeroMarine, saying, I have more Vikings, so I can just win these trades.
Yeah, at the same time, it's only 4 tanks to 14, so he has to be really careful. We saw a similar situation when it was 2 to 10 2 games ago. So Clem really, I don't know if he has any business trying to push out, because HeroMarine can basically, use the tanks as as you know, like just dead meat there at the front, and make sure that they can encroach a little bit closer to Clem, and that they can actually gain space even without anti-armor missiles. Like he can kind of just shake it off and say, I actually have enough tanks to continue to push regardless of what you want to do there, or when you're trying to be sneaky and trying to pick off my 16 tanks with your 4.
Yeah, really funny. The addition of these Marines is where a lot of Clem's additional supply is coming into. He's heavily actually fallen behind now in that Viking count, not only in terms of like number of Vikings he has right now, but the health of his Vikings, I would also say, is a little bit lower. We're going to see another skirmish over here that is starting to heavily favor HeroMarine as he pushes further on forward. Auto turrets coming out, and Clem, he actually can't give up any more ground. If he gives up any more ground, his production is going to start getting camped for the low ground.
Yeah, when you give up that base, also you give up the right-hand side, right? So Clem is going to lose all of these command centers and the planetary fortress. He's looking for a way out of his own base, but hey, he's going to run into a few tanks here. Good interference matrices here. And now he's going to look for the airfight away from the tanks. That is probably the best chance that he has at somewhat of a reset. The supplies are still very even. Clem with a lot here on site, but HeroMarine with a very smart positioning here where the Ravens can actually contribute should Clem overextend past that cliff, whereas Clem cannot contribute with his own Ravens due to the tanks up the cliff of HeroMarine. So now Clem with a supply lead somehow, some way. Both players depleted as far as banks are concerned. Clem still with a potential better economy should they stabilize thanks to the SCVs, and the big fight is actually looks to end up favoring him. It's difficult to say as there's a few more Vikings flanking, and this is absolutely bananas for Abby. I'm not sure who's gonna come out on top here. It looks like Clem.
Wow, I am amazed that Clem is somehow coming out on top on the air world at the end of the day. A couple of reinforcing Vikings over here for HeroMarine. Remember, Clem lost a lot of bases, so his economy has also taken a big hit. He doesn't exactly have a crazy amount of production anymore. GG is called when they're both at even supply, but HeroMarine takes the game and ties up the series. It's literally at the moment that he GG'd, it was 101 to 101 supply there, Cats.
Yeah, I'm actually not exiting that game yet. I'm just gonna rewind it. I mean, positioning wise, it's definitely not ideal for Clem, right? Like he lost a lot of real estate, a lot of those fresh bases that he was mining. So he only has the top 2 left-hand bases mining, and HeroMarine should have a lot more than that. But maybe not aware that he still had been holding that worker advantage for a while, because yeah, maybe he could have yet stabilized, and he did kind of win out the trade in the air. So. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that he absolutely needed to leave again, but you know, like he was definitely behind again, right? Like it's
I mean, it's honestly really hard for me to call right there, Cass, because I was looking at the bases, you know, after we left the game and everything. HeroMarine was basically not mining for, I would say, most of his bases. It was like a handful of mules and stuff, but he actually also was in kind of a tough spot. He wasn't going to have as much like reproduction capabilities there for his army as he was losing it himself. So I do feel like maybe there was a chance that Clem could have stabilized there just by the fact that it would have been difficult for HeroMarine to get in on top of the production, which I think was going to be a key component, or just to even knock out another base. So I don't know. Yeah, I think I agree. The siege chain count being so low for Clem was going to really complicate things, but man, that was a really close ending. It is just funny how we've now had 2 different games, one for each player, where they left, and we're kind of like, I understand you were right behind, but man, it looked like it was actually still potentially really close.
Yeah, I think it was still definitely playable. Like you said, 101 supply to 101 supply. Clem awkward, like his position on the map, but he did have a few more SCVs. I checked the income graph or the income tab at the very end, and it was fairly even still, in spite of him not having that real estate, and also counted the orbital commands, right? Because he did lose a few of those, so that feels bad as a player. But HeroMarine was actually never able to catch up on that regard, which means even after losing a few orbital commands, they were just about even. HeroMarine ended up having just 1 more at 7 versus 6. So yeah, it was a fairly playable position still for Clem, I think. But yeah, I mean, they don't know everything, and sometimes, you know, like you're in the game and it just feels bad. It just feels like everything went wrong. It just feels like it's your last shot. It just feels like it's your last gasp of breath, and if you don't manage to hold on to it, then it just feels like you're probably dead and want to exit. So
God forbid that a player who has been on the defensive for like 10 minutes of that last game doesn't know the exact state of his opponent's economy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, guys, we are going to jump in here. Game number 5. This is the one that decides it. Who's going to get to move on to face off versus Rainer in the grand finals? Will it be this man down here on the bottom right-hand side of the map representing Mouth Sports? He is Big Gabe, HeroMarine, Blue Terran.
And in the top left-hand side, it is going to be the Red Terran for Team Liquid, Clem.
Little unfortunate with the color choices, I will say here at the end, cats, that Mouth Sports has the red logo. Clem is red instead. Team Liquid has the blue logo. HeroMarine is blue instead.
Completely agree. That should
Missed
be
opportunity.
definitely swapped. Missed opportunities, and it is a little bit of a shame, but what can you do?
Yeah.
And yeah,
Obviously,
I mean,
uh,
I was just gonna say to your point also, Ravi, on just how Clem had been on the back foot for the majority of that game. He had been losing the trades, getting attacked, etc. Right? A lot of that is because HeroMarine had a lower SCV count, and that meant that his army was always bigger, right? But it doesn't feel like that necessarily in the position of the player. So if we had taken a look, and I did take a look at the units lost up throughout that game, Clem was lagging like 8,000 resources behind on that regard. But he always had the economy to afford to lag that far behind, right? So so again, yeah, it is that kind of thing where if you're in his position, it can really feel like you've been taking a beating over and over in the entire game, and that was probably the last straw.
well,
Again.
speaking of taking a beating again and again, over and over again, yet again, Clem is able to kill that SCV on the low ground, and Big Gabe is able to, at least not lose the second SCV or anything. And I don't really, unless Big Gabe gets really out microed here, I think it will be tough for Clem to get a second SCV or to do a whole lot more damage, because this is one of the maps where you do have a high ground to your natural. So it means that if you try and charge up the ramp with your Hellions and Reapers and stuff, you usually do take the first volley from your opponent. It's tough to overcome that.
Yeah, that is near impossible to overcome with equal numbers of units, right? If you get shot at first, then your units are gonna die first when it comes down to it. And once you start losing units, you start losing DPS, you start losing HP on your total army, and then it becomes impossible to win those fights. So Clem, very smartly gonna use the topography of the map here, as is HeroMarine. Actually, both players kind of like not overcommitting or not committing further into additional Reapers or Hellions like we've seen on other maps without ramps, but instead just burrow a mine at the front and feel like they're gonna be safe because their opponent should have no business pushing up those ramps.
Yep, it is going to be pretty tough for them to make that actually happen. So safety cyclones will definitely solidify things. I think another small thing, just as long as we're talking about consistency that we've seen from both these players in these games, is that HeroMarine has always been going for that Raven and then actually just getting a bit aggressive with it, trying to go for a little bit of that auto turret harassment in quite a few of these games. So even the game that I think you were talking about this, he ended up getting aggressive and doing kind of an aggressive little push out timing against Clem. He still went for some of the auto turret harassment and just made sure he wasn't using all of the energy there. So wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened again. I'm very curious if Clem's going to try and react a little bit to knowing that HeroMarine really likes doing that right now.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. As both players are going to get their first Raven out. And that was a little bit of HeroMarine kind of taking on Clem's shoes in the previous game, at least for the start of it, right? Like he was the more aggressive player. He was the player trying to put on some economic pressure and whatnot. And Clem ended up being the one that ended up going for the first attack, which didn't go too well for him. So swapping hats for that last game. And, once they stabilized, it was HeroMarine kind of going back to his roots as far as like just having more army and whatnot and playing for position. But yeah, I think they've shown range as well, right? Like they've shown what you were talking about. Like for example, for on the side of Clem, he can be a little bit more reserved. He can sit back a little bit more. And on the side of HeroMarine, that he can be the aggressor, that he can put on some pressure as well.
Absolutely. We're going to end up seeing some really cool move outs. So I love watching HeroMarine with the way that he positions his units in the earlier stages of the game. He does these little move outs, and you can kind of see just as he goes through this little fog of war, identifying areas of, okay, if there was this kind of like medevac siege tank drop or something coming my way, I'm going to cover like the center area, move up with my main army to go to the zone like a watchtower. I confirm that there's nothing coming on this north side. The Widowmine covers the ramp from the south side. Like, I love these little things that these players are doing to just identify what could or could not possibly be moving around the map. And that kind of gives them a little bit more space to work with on the back at home. But we do see Clem getting a nice little army situated to establish that third base. And the Reaper is going to spot that tiny move out. Oh, Widowmine finds another Widowmine. Clem cleans up that Widowmine of HeroMarine, but HeroMarine's going to be the one that's actually looking to get some damage done, as his third base is, well, it's not really trying to do that same kind of move out that Clem has done right now, Cats.
Yeah, but Clem already in position here. He's not even going to reposition his Widowmine either. He has control of the Watchtower on the other side, so he will probably... I thought he was going to keep it, actually, as HeroMarine is now going to look to contest. And actually, this is brilliant from Clem. This is better from Clem. Because he has gotten around. He has gotten into the base of HeroMarine, potentially with 3 Reapers and a Hellion. This is something if you can get into that mineral line. Of course, this engagement is going to be more important, as Niall will point us to it. But now it's actually going to be Clem with the disables there at the front. However, the tank's not in range to capitalize, but it doesn't matter too much, as the Vikings are going to win out in the air, and Clem will take an advantage. Oh, no, indeed.
Yeah, so Clem takes an advantage. That would have been just an okay advantage in and of itself, but HeroMarine accidentally floating his command center into the center of the map when he clearly, of course, he meant to actually just send that to the third to land over there. I think what makes this more painful is it's not even orbital command. It's not even building up energy during the time that it's floating around. You can just kind of make up for it a little bit with some quick mule call downs or something. This entire time, oh my God, the Hellion's even going to, he's going to block the landing for a bit now.
That is just brutal. On the other side, HeroMarine is going to try to make something happen. The tanks of Clem are sieged a little bit far back, but it doesn't matter. He has Marines. This might just be it, Robbie. I think Clem might have done it, because that feels extra bad after the CC floating from HeroMarine. He's going to stick around, but he is in a bad position, worse than he was when he left that previous game, perhaps. And now Clem on the offense here. He's going to look to punish. He's going to look to close things out. He's got to be feeling pretty good about the last minute or two here of this game.
The snowball is rolling down the hill. Is Big Gabe massive enough to halt the momentum? Can he prevent this snowball from happening? It looks like the answer is no. Clem snowballs his way to victory, prevents the reverse sweep, gets up because he's got energy. And that is going to be Clem moving on to the grand final.